we believe that there is no difference between any other king on the earth or president and prime minister and with Pharaoh and Nimrod. And these guys, why? Because they were not appointed by God. Some of the kings that are not appointed by God are really bad, evil tyrants. Some of those kings and prime ministers and presidents that were not appointed by God, they are less tyrannical. Some are even righteous, so to speak, or good. But at the end of the day, they are good people, perhaps, that are not appointed by God. And if you're not appointed by God, then you're appointed by the devil for some particular reason. And you're sitting in a place that really you shouldn't be sitting in. It's not for you to do that. And if it was for them to do that, then what is the point of Jesus Christ coming back? I mean, we should just say that we don't need Jesus to come back because we have already the kings and the prime ministers and the presidents that we have. Why do we need Jesus? We don't, right? Because we have already other people that are righteous, or the possibility of us electing or appointing somebody who is righteous over our own affairs is good enough, but not possible, because if we follow most of the people that are on the earth, we would be led astray. And we find also that God in the Hebrew Bible becomes very offended and angry at the Israelites on many occasions, and especially evident in the story of Saul and Samuel. When they suggested that somebody else be appointed other than Samuel, and they ask God for a king, like the other nations, God becomes very offended. It's present in the New Testament, as we've spoken about before, me and you. And how the people were given the choice by the Romans when they occupied the land. The Romans were like, who do you want? Do you want Jesus? Do you want Barabbas, right? The evil criminal, murderer. Then the people said, no, we want Barabbas. We don't want Jesus. So here the people were confronted with a choice between the king that was appointed by God, whose righteousness manifest, or between a murderer that they knew was a murderer, and they chose the murderer. And so, how can we trust the opinion of the people? Now, some of the brightest minds that have ever walked on the earth, such as Socrates. He was opposed to the idea of democracy because of that. He said we cannot choose the leader. Why? He says very simple. He said if you take two people that are extremely ignorant, okay, and they hold an opinion that's really bad, and you put them in front of somebody who's a scientist, who's educated, who has the interest of the people in mind, who's known as being honest and righteous. In a democratic system, these two evil criminals, these two evil, uneducated individuals will always have their way because they are more in number, right? Exactly. So it's about more. Whoever has more numbers, they win. Their system wins. And the Quran and the Torah and the Bible, they all tell us that most of the earth is unrighteous, right? And God's chosen people are only a small group of people, and that's the Israelites, and everybody else is bad at the time, right? And for the majority of the Hebrew Bible. And the same thing is present in the Quran, that those who are with Muhammad and accept Muhammad's rule, these are the believers, and the non-believers are many, many more. The angels are few, and the demon on earth. The angels are few, Al-Hafs Sharif says, and the demons are many, and the animals and the beasts are many. And so a democratic system will never work to bring about a righteous and just solution, so so long as there are more unrighteous people on the earth than there are righteous people. It's just not going to work. It's our right to believe. We have a right to believe that, just as much as the Jews have a right to believe that the true king of the world is the Messiah, and that they're the true people of the world, right? The true, chosen people of God, and that God gave them a right to kick out the Palestinians and to establish a state. Just so much as they believe that one day the Messiah is going to come, and that's why they need to build the third temple so that the Messiah will come and actually rule over all of the nations of the earth, just as the Christians believe that Jesus Christ will come in the end time and rule the earth, whether the people like it or not, and he will establish God's kingdom, and that he is the true king, and that so everybody else's rights have to take a back seat, right, in order that God, who created the earth, that his will is implemented, just like the Muslims believe in the concept of a Mahdi. We believe that the Mahdi is here and Jesus is here. And it's not just about Mahdi or Jesus. If we were living in any other time during the Earth's history, there would always be the Imam of the time, and it's always the Imam of the time, or the person, the prophet, the messenger, the king, the judge who was appointed by God, who has the authority to rule over the earth, and the people, and that's whom we reserve the right to believe in. And so we don't want to pledge allegiance to earthly kings, false kings from the devil. Yeah, because we believe that if we do pledge allegiance to one of these kings or prime ministers or presidents, then we're actually pledging allegiance to the person who appointed them, right? Yeah, because there's narrations from the Ahlul Bayt Islam that state that if you have somebody who tells you to do something and you obey them, then actually you obey the source of where that command is coming from. Yeah, so if somebody commands you to do evil, then that evil was from the devil. And so by obeying this person, you're obeying the devil, right? And if he commands you to do good, then you're doing good because the good came from God. And so by obeying this person's command, you are obeying God. And so that's why there's a hadith that says that there's no obedience to a creature in the disobedience of God, right? Yeah, we only obey creatures in the obedience of God because we're actually by that obeying God. Yeah, can't do the will of Satan by pledging allegiance to these demons and recognizing their countries. We just can't do that, and this is like something that's in our heart and souls and minds. If we're being nonviolent, if we're not participating in politics, if we are not building a militia, if we don't have any weapons, if we believe in peace and turning the other cheek, then what is it that anybody should bother us about, or like be angry and try to force us to to feel any other way? I mean, they grant rights in the first world countries, right, to everybody, even the people that believe that God is a flying spaghetti monster. I mean, they have an officially recognized church and religion, and they're free to believe in that. Anybody who wants to believe in anything is free to believe in anything. There's people that believe that they're cats. There's people that believe that they're dogs or that they're different creatures. There's people that identify as that. People are free to identify as men or women or anything else, and they should be able to, because God granted mankind the freedom to believe whatever it is that they want to believe. Their beliefs and their hearts and then their minds is between them and God. And so that's that. If I want to identify as the Mahdi, if I want to believe that I'm the Mahdi, if people want to believe that about me and they want to share with me in this belief, if people see logic and truth in what it is that I'm saying, and we're posing no problem for others, then we should be able to do so. And that's what we do. And we also, identify these worldly authorities as being appointed. We recognize them as being appointed by the devil, and we want to have nothing to do with that. Because if we do recognize them, then we're from them. And if we are from them, then we're going to end up in hellfire, because the only person who gets into heaven in every day and age are the people that recognize their divinely appointed king, and they partake in and are part of that divinely, divine population, that divine garden, that divine government. These are the only people that attain salvation. Hence, The Jews that are with Moses, they attain salvation. The Jews that are with Joshua, they attain salvation. The Israelites that are with him, the Israelites that are with Jesus, they attain salvation. The Israelites that are with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi, the Muslims that are with Muhammad, the believers that are with Muhammad, they also attain salvation. The Shia companions, right? Whether it's Salman al-Farisi, or Abu Dharr, or Al-Maqdad, or Ammar ibn Yasir, these guys, now they attain salvation. The narrations state that the entire Muslim nation apostated after the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So why were they considered to be apostates except for those four companions? Because everybody else accepted the authority of Abu Bakr and Omar, and they abandoned the wilaya, the kingship, the authority of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. While Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib was appointed by God, and Abu Bakr was appointed by the devil, and the first person who pledged allegiance to him was the devil, whereas the first person who will pledge allegiance to the Mahdi is Gabriel. And so we believe that, if we don't want to be apostates, because it is possible that all of the Muslims be apostates, even if they're praying and fasting. We actually do believe them to be apostates. We believe very clearly and openly, I'm saying it, that the entire Muslim nation have all apostated. They are apostates, kuffar. And the same thing with the Christians and with the Jews and with the Hindus and with the Buddhists. All of them are non-believers. Only you can only be a believer if you recognize in our religion, and we believe that that is the religion of Islam and Judaism and Christianity. You can only be a believer if you are recognizing the authority of the divinely appointed imam of the time. And so we can't recognize any other authority because you can't side with Imam Ali and Abu Bakr at the same time. You can't side with Muhammad and Musaylama at the same time. You can't side with Jesus and, Pontius Pilate at the same time. You can't recognize these authorities together. You can't recognize Moses and Pharaoh, or Abraham and Nimrod, or Noah and the descendants of Cain, right? The governments that were in place at the time. You can't recognize the authority of Adam, and also at the same time the devil. There were angels, they prostrated to Adam. The children of the devil and the demons, the rebels, they prostrated to the devil, and they followed him outside of the garden. And so that we don't want to be outside the garden. We need to be in the Garden of Eden, and we believe that God is going to establish that garden one way or another. We believe that He's establishing it actually right now, and we think that this notion is very important, and we are calling upon all believers around the world to do whatever it is that they can do, right? To reach God's divinely appointed Imam, to be a part of his Garden of Eden, to give back the resources which were lent to them, in order that they may do like the apostles did, and establish a divine community around the Jesus of the time. Well, I think it's very clear, and I think that it's also very clear and it's evident in the Holy Scriptures that the Antichrist is going to preach brotherhood without the Father. All right. And that's what we find happening today with Israel. They want God's people, the brotherhood of God's people, without the Imam of the time, that father, that appointed leader. Same thing with the Christians. They want the father out, and they only want the brotherhood, we the people of the United States, we the people, the congregation, right? But they don't want the leader of the congregation. The same thing with the Muslims. They want just this relationship between themselves and between God. The Sunnis are ridiculous. They say the same thing that Iblis says, and they're totally unaware that they say, why is it that we need somebody in between us and God? We know what the religion is now. We don't need anybody between us and God. And so they repeat without recognizing that they're actually upon the religion of Iblis. He also didn't want anybody between him and God, and so he refused to prostrate to the authority. And so the Muslims, even today, they have this congregation, this brotherhood of believers without the Father. And so the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, all of them without exception, are following the Antichrist and the system of the Antichrist because they're following the system of the supremacy of man, the system of the Dajjal, the system of Iblis. And while the believers are the only ones that are free from that system of the Antichrist because they reject the choice of man, and they are the only ones that believe in brotherhood with a father, and that is the congregation with the divinely appointed leader. So thank you so much. We're on this planet for a very small time, right? And so for one of us to claim uh, ownership over something which will outlast us is a preposterous ideal, right? Because the earth is infinite and we are finite. So how is it that something that's finite can claim ownership over something that's infinite and that will be there after we are long gone? That's amazing. Very good example. Here's a property that is owned. It's been around for 1,000 years, and it's going to strong enough to be around for another 1,000 years. And here's somebody who rents it, and they live in it. And the owner was kind enough to allow them to live in it rent free. And they, end up passing away one day, and then they want to, the audacity, the rudeness of these people that before they pass away, they leave in their will, they write a will and they leave in the will that their children should inherit from them this property that doesn't even belong to them, that they were just renting for a small time period, right? The same thing is true here. God owns the earth and all of the land that's on it. We are merely renters. We are merely passerbys. We are people that are here we're just crossing a bridge. The earth is a bridge that we're crossing through. We're not settling here. And so why it's not appropriate then that we try to cut up territories and states and make up kingdoms and declare that it belongs to us and make it a thing that other people have to live by rules that we place when this is not even, we're foreigners in the land, we're just passing through. What we find is later on, Jesus comes. And the Israelites, they have all their rabbis and their Pharisees and their scholars and their priests. And they are really hoping that the Messiah is going to come from one of them, that the Messiah is going to come from one of them, and he's going to actually enforce them, all right, and support them. And what happens is that God chooses somebody else, somebody that they least expect to be chosen, um, and that is Jesus, the Son of Mary. And even though they reject Jesus, God does not go with their opinion. God doesn't say, okay, guys, well, since you don't want the person that I appointed responsible over you, or you don't want the king that I chose for you, then you don't have to worry about it. I'll just choose somebody else for you, or you guys choose for yourselves. It doesn't work like that. God got very angry with them. He caused the Romans to destroy the temple and to exile all of them. God ended up not sending to the Israelites another prophet or messenger or Messiah for thousands of years, and they remained for, over almost 2,000 years banished from, their homeland. And so God, he says that this is his land, this is my king, you have to accept it. And the people who are expecting salvation, they have to become citizens of the state and adhere to the government that God had appointed even if it is a government that is rejected by the rest of the world, even if it is a government that is without a land. Only those whom accepted the governance and the authority, right, the kingship of Jesus Christ attain salvation. If you don't accept that and you reject that, then you will never attain salvation, and that's a very known concept. In I think that nowadays they have made popular this idea of like, oh, but there's a separation between church and state. No, the government is separate from religious affairs. Okay, worship of God and managing the affairs of the people. These are two different things. We have a constitution, okay, that rules our material lives that we have to adhere to and pledge allegiance to. And that's the Constitution, for example, of the United States, or whatever constitution for whatever country. And then we have the Constitution of our souls, of our spiritual lives, which is the Bible or the Quran, etc. And they sought to, and that was the big deception by the devil, we believe. They sought to separate the two of them when it doesn't even make sense, because the two of them are inherently tied to one another like this. And they never separate. And that's the whole reason why Jesus has a second coming, because Christians believe that there was some unfinished business that he left and he must attend to. And that unfinished business is what? It's none other than him coming back and reclaiming worldly authority and being at the head of a divine government on earth, where he rules the entire earth and returns the earth back to be under the rulership and the authority and the kingship of God, who owns the earth and who created the earth in the first place. And so the whole point of Jesus coming back is because the devil had continued to hold firm, and control the governments and the kings of the world. And we find that being present in the scene of the temptation of Christ. And we mentioned it many, many times, where the devil, when he's tempting Jesus, he tells him, he says, fall down and prostrate to me, and I'll make you king over all these kingdoms. So he already had authority over making kings and removing kings, and he was going to do so for Jesus, so long as Jesus would recognize that he's his God or his king. Yeah. Which Jesus refused to do. And so the whole point of Jesus coming back is to snatch away that authority, the earth, from that property, that land, that garden, from the devil, and to establish God's kingdom on earth. Whoever on earth gives life to dead land gets to keep that land. Okay? And in another narration, it clarifies that even further, and it says that whoever gives life to a dead land gets to eat whatever he makes from that dead land, and everything else from it, he has to give it to the imam of the time. Okay. And so here becomes clear this kind of system that's put into place. The idea that's being shown here is that there's this spirit that is blown into Adam in the very beginning. That spirit represents God on earth. um, that spirit is placed in whoever God chooses, and that spirit is placed into, he becomes the inheritor of God's authority and property in creation. Yes. Okay. And when one person passes away, who acts as a vessel for that spirit that never dies of God, that spirit passes on into the next one and the next one and the next one. And authority and kingship and ownership is preserved for that spirit and that spirit alone. And it is only that spirit from the time of Adam all the way till our current day and age and beyond that really has the right to delegate the affairs of mankind and ensure that everybody gets whatever it is that they need. And God's system is that the garden is present, and it is available for all the workers to work in it. If a worker comes forth and he works on the land, he can work as hard as he wants and to make it as beautiful as he wants. And he can do whatever it is that he wants with that land, but he can only take from the land that which he needs. Yes. Okay. After he's done and he's satisfied and he's taken what he needs from the land, he can't continue to hoard the resources from the land and allow 25,000 other children to die every day from starvation. He can't allow 9/10 of the planet to live in poverty or without, while 1% or 10% of the population, rule them or live over them. Yeah, of course, everything other than what you need from the land that you work has to be given back to that spirit or the imam of the time in order that he can ensure that everything is fairly and justly distributed amongst the people. Nowadays they have made popular this idea of like, oh, but there's a separation between church and state. The government is separate from religious affairs. Okay, worship of God and managing the affairs of the people. These are two different things, and that was the big deception by the devil. We believe they sought to separate the two of them when it doesn't even make sense because the two of them are inherently tied to one another like this. So today we would like to talk about the cornerstone of our beliefs, the central theme of it, the essence of our religion, and that is this idea of the supremacy of God, the kingship of God, the rulership of God, the idea that allegiance is to God alone, and that's what's actually written in the center of our flag, of our banner, the black banners that were mentioned that they would emerge from the east in the end times, in the times of the Qa'im or the times of the Mahdi. This is different. This is not like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I think that these questions that I seek today to kind of answer through us having a very honest and open discussion about this very important and vital pillar and aspect to our faith. And we believe that there is a creator. We believe that God is the creator. And we believe that God, being the creator and likening himself in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, hence the narration where he says that the creation are the children of God, and the most beloved to God are those who are the kindest to the children of God, right? So if God has children in this parable or this example, then God is kind of likening himself to a father. We believe that it is upon God, the creator and the father of creation, to take care and sustain and raise his children. I think that that's a very basic notion and fact aspect to that we, meaning all peoples that believe in a God and recognize that there is a creator to the universe and to creation, we all agree that it is God's responsibility, yes, to sustain creation, and that without Him, we would not be able to be sustained, right? Yeah, and taken care of. Mhm. And I think that all creatures, for the most part, they hope that the God that created us all is a kind God, and we would imagine Him, and we do believe Him to be a just God. And so we are constantly looking forward to, expecting, desiring, wanting to feel and taste the justice of God in creation. Everybody wants a righteous father. Everybody wants a righteous experience on earth. And we believe that in order for God to fulfill his responsibility, taking care of creation, the only way that he can do so is if he is in control of the government. If he's in control of the government, why? Because what is a government? A government is a body of individuals that is set up that their purpose in life is to take care of the population, take care of the creatures, right? Yeah. And so, because every king, every president, every prime minister that is voted into power or appointed somehow to take care of the affairs of the population that he is appointed over, he has to form a government to assist him and to carry out his will, his plan, his vision. Right? So we believe that likewise, in order for God to take care of his people and his creatures, his population, he has to set up a government. And the government has to be under his control. And not just to the government, but also the land, the resources that the human beings need to survive and to sustain themselves. This also has to be under the control of God. And who else better than God to control it, seeing how he is the one who created it, right? And so he owns it. And that, oh God, the king or the owner of all ownership, the king of all kingship, he's the one who created everything. So he is the king of all kings and the owner of everything that there is to be owned, and the owner of all owners that own things or claim to own things in creation. I believe that God made this perfectly clear for mankind from the time of Adam, from the very beginning of creation, all the way till now. This idea has been very much present and emphasized upon in the Bible, in the Torah, in the Quran, and in all of the holy books, to be honest with you. And we believe that in the very beginning, God says, verily I am making a caliph in the land. And he appoints Adam and he causes the angels to prostrate to him. The people that don't prostrate to him uh, are who? It's Iblis and whoever follows Iblis, right? The children of Iblis. The result of it was that Iblis and his children were banished from the Garden of Eden. They were told that they have to leave it. Okay, so here's an interesting idea that is established at the very beginning of the creation of mankind, where there is this place. The place is owned by God. It's this beautiful garden where there's peace and prosperity. Supposed to be for all creatures and for all mankind. God says this garden belongs to me. He's walking in the garden because he owns the garden, right? And he says, I'm going to make somebody responsible over the garden. And so he creates Adam, and he says that he's going to blow from his spirit into Adam. And so his essence, God's essence, will be placed inside of Adam, and his representative, his messenger, his manager over the affairs of the garden, and everybody has to prostrate and obey and accept that authority. The one who doesn't accept that authority, he can't be in the garden anymore. He has to leave the garden. All right. So if you're not going to accept the government of God, then you have to leave the country of God or the property of God. This is the idea that we accept and we believe in. Absolutely. And we believe that Muslims should have recognized that. And we believe that Christians and Jews should have recognized that. And we believe that that is the essence of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, that God establishes a government in his country led by or headed by Adam. And all those who don't accept that, they have to go outside. And if you cause chaos within and break the laws that God sets up, or attempt to attack or violate the government which God set up, then you have to be banished like Cain was when he slew Abel. Yeah. We believe that this idea was further emphasized later on in the Bible and in the Quran in the story of Noah. We kind of get an idea to the vastness of how, far God's ownership over the land is. Is it just the Garden of Eden? No, it is the entire earth, actually. Yes. God is tired of the chaos that is ensuing on the planet uh, at the hands of people and governments that were not appointed by him. And so what does he decide to do? He decides to send a flood to wipe off, all creatures, to eliminate everybody on the earth. God is the one who created it. He reserves the right to destroy it. He doesn't want that the earth operate except in a just and good, righteous way. Under the leadership of the people that he appoints. And that's why he's the one who chooses Noah, tells him to build an ark, commands the believers to board the ark alongside with Noah, and then he clears the entire planet in order that he may give the entire earth to Noah and the believers and the descendants. So here we have this idea that God is owning the earth and he's handing over the earth to whoever it is that he wants. And in this case, he's handing over the earth to his representative, his vicegerm, Noah. Oddly enough, the same thing happens in the story of Abraham later. You have God choosing Abraham out of all peoples. He's rejecting kings that self appointed themselves, like Nimrod, right? And he says, I don't care about Nimrod's power. I don't care about his kingdom. And Nimrod was a king that ruled like a very large portion of the earth at the time. And he had great power. God rejected that. God chose his own leader to represent him and to be the head of state. And he grants him a promise that he's going to give him a land from the Nile to the Euphrates, a land that's called the Promised Land in the Bible. And he says that this is for you and the believers. This is your kingdom because this whole earth is my earth. I already promised that I wasn't going to destroy all the non-believers on it again by means of a flood and wiping it out. And so, what I'll do is I'll just give you this particular plot of land. All the rest of it, of the world, is chaos. And we find that the same thing is happening again. There's like part four, chapter four of the same story being told again. Here, a self-appointed king and leader, a tyrant who's unjust, appoints himself. It seems like everybody that appoints themselves ends up being unjust and horrible. And every way that the people choose to be a leader over them ends up being horrible. And so Pharaoh ends up appointing himself, and he says that he's the leader of everybody and he's the king and everybody has to obey him. But God doesn't like that. And he doesn't like that the Israelites and other people, they're living underneath with the authority or the rulership of this tyrant are being oppressed. And so he chooses his own leader, and his own leader is Moses. And he commands Moses to take the Israelites out of Egypt, out of the authority of the tyrant. He tells them that true believers cannot live under the government of the oppressor, that you have to go far away and live under the king that I appoint, and that is the only way that you will prosper and flourish. And he commands them to. The generals at the time, they were trying to come up with a plan, okay, on what they shall do in order to justify a war against Cuba, or how can we remove Fidel Castro from power? And so they came up with lots of different plans, and proposals for this. But one of their proposals was that they were going to send the mafia against the Cubans and against Fidel Castro. They would have the mafia assassinate Fidel Castro. So, but then you have this revelation that okay, well, obviously the U.S. government, instead of arresting the mafia, they're actually utilizing criminal organizations such as the mafia to carry out international assassinations at this high level. So they knew that the mafia was upset that Fidel Castro were shutting down all of their casinos and things and operations that they had in Cuba. And so they proposed that they utilize, manipulate the mafia and pay the mafia in order that it takes care of the dirty work of the United States. So this kind of it makes the United States really like part of the mafia. It makes them mafia too because they're utilizing the mafia. It makes them criminals as well. So that was something which is very controversial. Another one of their plans was that they were going to try to utilize, um, for example, ex-lovers of Fidel Castro to put poison in his drink in order to assassinate him. At one point, they had proposed um, using chemicals to alter the body of Fidel Castro, causing his hair to fall out and causing him to grow breasts in order to embarrass him on the public stage and to take away this kind of macho man image that he has. So he'd lose his mustache and his hair and all this stuff, and then he'd just be a bold man with breasts, so to speak. So there were these crazy plans, and it's quite interesting that they were talking about doing things like this in the 1960s. But I think their most controversial proposal came in the form of what we find in this project called Project Northwoods, and in it they basically said that the U.S. public would not support a war against Cuba, all right, just by means of us declaring that it's a threat. The world also would not support that or allow this type of aggression against an independent country, right? Because they're Cubans and now they're carving out their own destiny. It's not for another country to interfere in that. And so they did not, they wanted to kind of garner the support of the American public while um, fending off the criticism from the rest of the world. So they said that the only way that we can achieve this, the only way that we would be able to invade Cuba, remove Fidel Castro, right, and put our troops on the ground over there is if we basically make a false flag operation. Okay. All right. And so they came out with various proposals for the false flag operation. One of them is that they would take Cubans that were friendly to the United States. So they're basically like Cuban citizens that are agents of the United States that are anti Fidel Castro, and they would make them on camera attack a US base that exists on Cuban soil, which is Guantanamo Bay. Then they would say, oh, look, Fidel Castro and his troops are attacking us. So they would dress dissidents, Cuban dissidents, agents of the United States, as Fidel's soldiers and have them launch attacks against a US base. And in that stunning admission, we realized, and the American public realized, and the world realized, that the US not only had the ability to lie, but it had the ability to stage events that are not true. It had the ability to actually attack its own assets. And not only that, but they came up with proposals in the project uh, of blowing up like US Navy ships in the region. Oh, and not only that, but the project proposed as well that there be a hijacking of a US plane and that the plane be hijacked and then destroyed or blown up. And here's the most stunning part is that they proposed in there that they have Cubans who are agents, right? Posing as Cuban terrorists, and they would make them land on the soil in Florida and Miami, Florida, and also in Washington, and start attacking US citizens in a terrorist attack in order to cause the rest of the country to rally behind the United States and justify its invasion of Cuba. That is crazy. I mean, personally, I wasn't aware of what was in Project Northwoods when you first mentioned it. So to me, that as a U.S. citizen, that's extremely shocking. And I think many Americans actually are still unaware of this particular declassified document. And it just makes me think, okay, this was stuff that was proposed. Uh, the door to anything is open now because that trust is broken. They have no qualms with attacking their own people in order to use it as a means to an end, which is their overall agenda. Uh, so as a U.S. citizen, that really, I mean, that breaks my trust in the government, and I'm 100% sure that it has escalated from there in the generations that have passed since that time. Yeah, so that's the idea, right? Like, is that people they began to think to themselves, okay, well, this is crazy. Like, what can I believe now? The U.S. government is capable of doing anything. Hey, now the project itself was refused by John F. Kennedy. He was there was a bunch of generals, like five, six of them, that they signed off on this project. They all wanted to go through. They just needed the signature of the President of the United States, and then it would take place. JFK, he looked at it. He was in agreement and alignment with them that he wanted to assassinate uh, Fidel Castro, which is legal. He wanted to also invade Cuba, which is legal. He just disagreed with them on the means. He was worried that this plan be exposed and he would be destroyed politically, right? And that it would be a great big scandal. So he declined signing off on it, and it was just JFK's signature that came between this plan being implemented or not. Right? Now, this plan that wasn't implemented, it was declassified. And it makes you wonder how many classified documents still exist in the United States archives or governmental archives that um, hold within it secrets, and lies of the U.S. government that they would never perhaps release to the public, or they'll only release to the public many, 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 many years down the line when it's already too late and it doesn't matter anymore. The people began to naturally think of the events that were taking place in 9/11, or that a believer can be anything, but he can't be a liar. A liar, by nature, um, is this is something that is premeditated. The liar, while he's lying, knows that he's lying. He doesn't care that he's lying. He doesn't think that he will be exposed in his lies. And he doesn't care, to be honest, about the pain and the suffering that he might cause other people. He definitely is not a believer in the unseen, a believer that God hears and sees. He's not a believer in the presence of God. He's not a believer in a God, period. So the liar, he has the punishment of the hereafter. And that is a deep topic that we, have to talk about on another day. And that punishment is severe depending on the types of lies that he, told. But he also is cursed to endure a punishment in this world. And the punishment that he endures in this world is that he's exposed at some time, right? At some point. And that's why you have many sayings that go along the lines that lies don't have legs, meaning lies are not going to travel so far. You can't get away with your lies, right? Eventually, a lie will be exposed. We have narrations from the prophets and the messengers that say things to the effect of this, like Jesus salam, when he said, all things that are done in the dark must be exposed in the light or come to light at some point. And so the liar's lies will always become exposed one day. And when they do become exposed, that liar has to endure the punishment, right, of his lies, and that is that he will not be believed in anything, not in his lies, nor when he's telling the truth. The liar his punishment is to be like that boy who cried wolf. He cried wolf too many times, and the village people, they believed him and they came to save him, and then eventually they didn't believe him anymore because they saw that he was making a fool out of them. But then in the end, he's the one who ended up being the fool because he got swallowed by the wolf because nobody came to save him. And so I think that America on the world stage right now is suffering. I think it's suffering this the result of this karmic justice, as you put it. America, unfortunately, it used to be something great. It used to be something that the whole world respected and wanted to, and looked up to. Uh, Everybody wanted to go to America, and the whole world was influenced by American culture. They loved the American cartoons, the Saturday morning cartoons. They loved American movies that were made in Hollywood. They loved the American sports and entertainment that they exported all around the world, like the wrestling or the basketball, football, all these things. Um, People loved the freedoms and the ideals that were said to be upheld by the United States, and that, the United States appeared to the world as kind of like a superhero that would come and save the day when people were in need. It was that force of goodness, a land of freedom in which its arms were open to everybody. And people literally died, and they continued to die over the course of the 300 years to order to feed those who are in need. And America projected itself like that as a superhero. And they literally did that. They made a character called Captain America. That they propagated his story and his comics to the world and his movies, so that in the minds of the children all around the world, that America as a country was embodied in this kind of superhero that, defended, the just and fought against the unjust. But then something happened, unfortunately, and that is that America, especially, around the year 1999 to 2000, 2001, all around that time period, all the way leading up to 2003, you have this kind of breaking of trust of the American people and the rest of the world. The rest of the world began to doubt America. They realized that not every time that America cries wolf, that there actually is a wolf. They realized that America actually uh, made this boy that kept saying, there's a wolf, and rallying the rest of the world to its cause. The rest of the world realized that actually this boy that's crying is not a boy at all. It's a little wolf. It's actually a big wolf posing as a boy. A very big, dangerous wolf with big metallic fangs that is seeking to destroy and stop